She raised me like a son, but I was never just a boy to her. Section 1. There are stories you carry in your heart so long, they begin to shape the person you become. This is mine. It started in a small, quiet suburb nestled between forest hills and narrow streets. My mom left when I was barely 10, and my dad, a truck driver, was gone more than he was home. That's how I ended up spending more time at my best friend Jacob's house than my own. His mom, Claire, was everything I never had. Kind, present, warm. She made pancakes on Saturdays, sat with us during storms, and remembered the smallest details, like how I took my cocoa with 2 marshmallows and no whipped cream. "Eli, sweetheart, take off those muddy shoes before you walk through my kitchen," she'd call out, not with annoyance, but with laughter in her voice. It felt like home. Claire was a single mom, too. She raised Jacob alone after his dad left when he was a baby. She worked as a nurse and always seemed a little tired, but she never let it show. I remember one evening clearly. I was maybe 13. Jacob was sleeping over at another friend's house, and I had come over for dinner. It was just Claire and me at the table, the lights soft and the rain tapping against the windows. "You okay being here without Jacob?" she asked gently. I shrugged. Better than being home alone. She nodded, a flicker of something crossing her face. "You're always welcome here, Eli. Always." Those words did something to me. They planted a seed. Years passed. Claire never treated me differently than her own son. She patched up my scraped knees, helped me with math homework, and cheered at my school plays even when my own dad couldn't be there. But as I grew older, something changed. It wasn't sudden. It was like waking up one day and noticing that spring had crept in while you weren't looking. She wasn't just Jacob's mom anymore. She was Claire, a woman with soft eyes and a sad smile, a laugh that filled the kitchen, and a presence that made the world quieter. I turned 17 the year Jacob moved to another city with his dad. It was unexpected, a custody shift no one saw coming. Claire didn't fight it. Maybe she was too tired to. Jacob didn't want to leave, but he did. And then it was just the two of us. At first, nothing changed. I still stopped by after school. Still ate dinner at her table. Still helped with chores when I could. But the silence between us grew deeper. Not uncomfortable, but charged. Electric. One evening, I was fixing the leaky faucet in her kitchen. She stood nearby, drying dishes, her eyes on me longer than they needed to be. "You've gotten strong," she said quietly. "Not a boy anymore." I looked up. Our eyes met. The moment stretched. My heart thudded like it had when I scored my first goal in soccer. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. Claire broke the gaze first, but her voice trembled slightly. "You'll be off to college soon. Big world out there." I nodded, tightening the faucet with one last twist. "Doesn't feel right leaving you here alone." She laughed, but it was soft, almost sad. "I've been alone longer than you know." There was something in her tone, like she was saying more than the words aloud. A week later, I stayed late. We watched an old black and white movie, her favorite, with popcorn in a bowl between us. At some point, I realized we were sitting closer than usual. My arm brushed hers. Neither of us moved. She turned to me, eyes deep with something unreadable. And for a moment, I saw her not just as a mother figure, but as a woman. A beautiful, tired, lonely woman. And I wasn't just a boy anymore. The tension in the room grew thick, unspoken words swelling like waves before a storm. Claire reached for the remote, but her hand trembled. "Good night, Eli," she whispered and stood to leave. But I caught her hand. She froze. Slowly, she turned. Her eyes met mine. And I said the words I hadn't dared say until that night. "You don't have to be alone. Not anymore." Her lips parted. In shock, in hesitation, in something else I couldn't name. The rain began to fall outside. Heavy. Steady. And inside, everything changed. End of section 1. Waiting for your command to begin section 2. Section 2. The next morning, the house felt different. Claire avoided my eyes over breakfast. Her usual chatter was replaced with silence, and when I offered to do the dishes, she just nodded and left the room. I didn't know what last night had meant to her. If it was a mistake, or if deep down she felt what I did too. The truth was I hadn't slept. I laid awake, staring at the ceiling, reliving the look in her eyes when I told her she didn't have to be alone. It hadn't been a line. It hadn't even been planned. It had just escaped me. Honest. Raw. Real. When I finally got up the courage to face her again, it was evening. She was out in the garden, kneeling beside her tomatoes, wearing gloves and humming softly. It was a sound I hadn't heard all day, and it gave me hope. "Claire," I said, stepping onto the porch. She didn't look up. "Hey, Eli." I waited a second. "Can we talk?" She paused. Her hands stilled in the soil, and she let out a long breath. I was hoping we could. We sat on the porch steps, side by side. The cicadas buzzed in the trees. I could smell her shampoo, lavender and something warm. Comforting. "I crossed a line last night," I said. She turned to me, her expression soft. "You didn't." That stopped me. I don't think you did," she continued. "But you surprised me, and I've been trying to figure out what it meant. What it means now." I nodded slowly. "It meant I saw you, not just as Jacob's mom, or the woman who took care of me, but as you. Claire." She was quiet for a moment. "You were just a boy when you came into my life. But now you've grown. And I see you too, Eli. I've seen you for a long time. Maybe I just didn't want to admit it." The air between us felt charged again. But this time there was no fear. No shame. She reached out, her fingers brushing mine. "I've been so alone," she whispered. "Even when Jacob was here. Even with work, neighbors, all of it. But you filled that space without even trying." I squeezed her hand gently. "But you're still young," she said, voice trembling. "You have your whole life ahead of you. What if we regret it?" I shook my head. "I don't want to pretend I know what's right or wrong. I just know what I feel. And I've never felt anything like this. Not with anyone." A tear slid down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. "I wish things were different, that we had met under different circumstances." I smiled gently. "But we didn't. We met like this. And I wouldn't change it." She looked into my eyes again. Truly looked. Not with hesitation, but with acceptance. And maybe even love. That night, we didn't speak much. But we sat on the couch together, side by side, fingers entwined. The silence wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was understanding. Over the next few weeks, our connection deepened. Nothing happened suddenly. We didn't leap into anything forbidden or reckless. Instead, it unfolded slowly, tentatively. A shared cup of coffee in the morning. A longer hug when I left. A glance that lingered just a second too long. Then one Sunday, I stayed the night again. Jacob wasn't around. My dad was still gone. Claire made dinner, and we sat at the table like always. But this time, there was a candle burning. One candle. "I had this lying around," she said quickly. "Thought it'd be nice." I nodded, not mentioning the matching plates or the soft music playing in the background. After dinner, she poured wine. Just one glass for each of us. We sat in the living room, the window open to let in the summer air. She wore a light cardigan over her shoulders, and for the first time, she looked nervous. "Are you okay?" I asked. Claire nodded. "I'm just scared." "Of what?" "That this is real. That I'll let myself feel too much, and then you'll leave. Like everyone else." I moved closer. Took her hand. "I'm not going anywhere. I chose this. I choose you." She looked into my eyes for a long moment. Then she leaned in slowly. Her lips brushed mine, softly at first, almost testing. But I kissed her back. It wasn't like a teenager's first kiss. It was warm, full of years of longing and hidden pain. Her hands trembled slightly as they touched my face. She pulled back, eyes wide. "We shouldn't rush this." "I know," I whispered. "We don't have to." We held each other on the couch for what felt like hours. It was more intimate than anything else we could have done. A closeness that said we both knew the truth now. We weren't alone anymore. But the world outside wouldn't understand. And neither of us were ready for that conversation yet. As I fell asleep that night on her couch, her hand resting lightly on my chest, I knew everything had changed. And just when I thought I had finally found peace, the knock came on the door. Hard. Urgent. Claire sat up, her face pale. I blinked awake, heart pounding. She opened the door. It was Jacob. End of section 2. Awaiting your instruction to begin section 3. Section 3 final chapter. Jacob stood in the doorway, drenched in sweat and rain, his eyes darting between me on the couch and his mother standing frozen. "Eli," he asked, confused. What are you doing here?" Claire's voice cracked. "Jacob, it's not what you think." I sat up, running a hand through my hair. "Jacob, listen. It's complicated." He stepped inside, his jaw clenched. "Complicated?" I haven't heard from either of you in weeks. And now I find you sleeping here. Claire moved toward him slowly. I didn't plan this. Neither of us did. Jacob's voice rose. So what is this, Mom? Are you two together? What the hell is going on? The pain in his eyes hit harder than any words. This was the part we'd tried to delay. The part we weren't ready for. I didn't betray you, I said carefully. You know I'd never hurt you. But your mom and we found something neither of us expected. Jacob stared at us, hurt morphing into disbelief. She raised you like a son. And now you're what? In love with her? Claire's voice dropped to a whisper. Yes, and I know how it sounds. I know how wrong it seems. But it didn't start that way. I didn't see him that way until he wasn't a boy anymore. The silence stretched painfully. Jacob shook his head. I came back because Dad was a mess and I missed you. I wanted to come home. And now this is what I come home to. Claire tried to reach for him, but he stepped back. I need air. He walked out, the screen door creaking shut behind him. Rain still drizzled. The weight in the room pressed down on us like a storm cloud refusing to break. Claire sat down slowly, her hands shaking. I've lost him. I've lost my son. I kneeled beside her. Give him time. He's shocked, but he loves you. He'll come around. She nodded weakly, though her eyes brimmed with doubt. Days passed. Jacob didn't come home. I stayed away too, giving Claire space to reach him without my presence making things worse. We spoke over the phone, short calls, careful words. Then, one evening, she called me with her voice lighter than it had been in days. He wants to talk. Both of us. When I arrived, Jacob was already there, sitting at the kitchen table, arms crossed. He didn't stand. I've been thinking, he said, eyes flicking to mine. This whole thing still messes with my head. But I also remember what you meant to me, Eli. You were my brother. And I remember how my mom used to cry when she thought no one could hear her. How alone she was. Claire looked down at her hands, quiet. I don't understand it, Jacob said. But I've seen how she looks at you now. And how you look at her. I swallowed hard, unsure what to say. If you're both serious, if this isn't just some temporary thing, then I'll try to accept it. But I need boundaries. And time. Claire's eyes filled with tears. Of course. Anything you need, Jacob. He stood and walked out of the room. But he didn't slam the door. And that felt like a beginning. Months passed. We took things slowly. Carefully. I went off to college, but I came back most weekends. Jacob and I spoke again, eventually even laughed again. It was never exactly the same. But it was something. Claire and I lived quietly. We built a life not of fairy tales, but of understanding. Of healing. Of second chances. One autumn evening, years later, we stood in that same garden where we'd first talked openly. She looked over the fence at the setting sun. Do you ever regret it? I turned to her. Never. I'd rather walk this hard road with you than any easy one without you. She smiled, tears shining. I still worry. What people think. What they'll say. I kissed her hand. Let them talk. They weren't there when I had no mother. No home. No one who stayed. Claire leaned her head against my shoulder. But I stayed. You did. And so did I. In the eyes of the world, our story may always be misunderstood. But in the quiet corners of our hearts, we knew the truth. She raised me when no one else would. But I was never just a boy to her. I was her beginning again. And she was mine. / End of story.